Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu and I'm back with another Digimon deck profile video. So today I'm going to be taking a look at BT12, and BT12 offers us lots of new and powerful tools to be able to build and iterate on some new and existing decks. And today's deck I'm going to be taking a look at is going to be a brand new iteration on the Machinedramon deck. So Machinedramon is a really powerful toolbox style of deck where we're utilizing a whole bunch of different abilities from our level 5s to be able to shove into our level 6s to be able to make them as strong and powerful as they possibly can, both offensively and defensively, while having some really good protection to be able to keep our Digimon around and be able to get some good recursive value from it. So with all that said and done, let's just dive right into the deck. Starting off with the Digitamas, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Dorimon. So Dorimon is a really decent Digitama just because we're trying to add it to our Digimon's inheritable sources. So if we're utilizing our stack to go up the Digivolution chain, then it's going to be gaining us a benefit when we're utilizing some of our level 6's abilities to be able to help us draw some extra cards. And then as far as the level 3s go, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Dorumon. So we almost never care about his on-play ability, although we do have a little bit more added synergy with his on-play ability, where we could actually try to find our Chaosdramon X Antibody. But most of the time, what we're going to be doing is just hiding him in our raising area, so that way we could try to gain advantage of his ability, which is doing almost the exact same thing as Dorimon, except instead of drawing a card when we're adding to our inheritable sources, we're going to be gaining a memory, so that way our plays can be as tempo efficient as we could possibly make them. And then the last rookie of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Hagurumon. So the deck doesn't really have any good dedicated rookie digging tools, so Hagurumon is the next best thing, where we get to discard a machine or cyborg, which we have a whole bunch of in the deck, to be able to not only just get it into the trash so we could use for some of our abilities, but to be able to draw some extra cards to try to make the deck as consistent as it can possibly be. Next, on to the champions, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Tankmon. So Tankmon, we actually do care about for the fact that he is a cyborg, so we could use him with some of our cards that actually care about cyborgs, on top of the fact that he's going to be a really decent card to Digivolve up into, just because of his low Digivolution cost, so we could try to climb through our stages as efficiently as we possibly can. And then the last champion of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Guardromon. So this is the EX1 version of Guardromon, and we don't really care about the fact that he has the blocker ability on top of him. We care more so about his inheritable ability to try to make our deck as consistent as it possibly can be, because it's basically like having a Hagurumon, except in our inheritables as a when attack trigger to be able to try to fill up our trash and draw some extra cards at the same time. And then when it comes to the level 5s, we're going to be running a whole bunch of different level 5s just because we're trying to toolbox their inheritable abilities for our level 6 Digimon, and most of the time the top half of the card that abilities are native to it don't necessarily matter for how this deck wants to use them. So I'm going to be using 1 copy of MetalGreymon just because it's a really good way to try to DP boost our Digimon. I'm going to be using 1 copy of Megadramon from BT6. That's basically doing the exact same thing as the MetalGreymon we just saw, except the DP boost isn't as great, but we still want the consistency on trying to see different DP boosts to make our Digimon as strong as possible. Next, I'm going to be running 1 copy of Megadramon from EX1, not necessarily for its on-play ability, although that could actually come up and come in handy, but more so for the fact that it's going to be giving our higher stage Digimon the Security Tech Plus ability. I'm going to be running 2 copies of MetalTyrannomon from BT11, more so for the fact that its inheritable ability is basically doing the exact same thing as piercing, but a little bit better, just because it triggers during all turns, so when we're being defensive with our card or offensive with our card, it doesn't necessarily matter, just the ability to try to gain some benefit for deleting the opponent's Digimon and trash their security is why we want to utilize this card. Next, I'm going to be running 1 copy of Gigadramon from BT6, which is another DP booster, except during the opponent's turn, so that way it's making our defensive lines of play a little bit stronger. And then I'm going to be running 2 copies of EX1 Andromon just for the blocker inheritable, and it's a really good card to try to act as a digging tool for our higher stage Digimon when we're digivolving up into them. MetalTyrannomon at 2 copies from EX1 is also doing that same style of thing, except instead of its inheritable ability being blocker, its inheritable ability is giving us reboot. And then to complete the trifecta on running these when digivolving abilities to try to search for our higher stage Digimon, I'm going to be running 1 copy of EX1 MetalMamemon, just for that ability, on top of the fact that its inheritable ability is adding some extra control for the opponent's low-level Digimon. Next, I'm going to be running 2 copies of MetalGreymon from BT8 as another really good way to try to control the opponent's field and to have that inheritable ability to attack into the opponent's unsuspended Digimon, which pairs really nicely with MetalTyrannomon, so that way we could start burning the opponent's security while attacking into their Digimon, suspended or not. And then the last ultimate of the deck is going to be 2 copies of Megadramon from BT9. So this is a really important card against Tamer-based decks, as one of the few ways that we actually have to be able to delete and control their Tamers, so that way we could shove them underneath or digivolve up into them to start controlling the opponent's Tamers, and then with his inheritable ability attached to a really hard to kill level 6 body, we could use that recursively to be able to keep their Tamers in check. And then when it comes to our level 6s, we have a slew of really powerful level 6 Digimon that really rounds out what the deck is trying to do and be the core focus of how the deck is designed and wants to play. So I'm going to be running 3 copies of Chaosdramon from EX3, just because we have a whole bunch of different ways on how we could utilize this card, whether we're going to be hard playing him, whether we're going to be digivolving him on top of a level 5, or even digivolving him on top of a Machinedramon, just gives him a whole bunch of ways to gain access at the ability, to be able to have him get access at some of our level 5 cyborgs with different card numbers from our hand or trash, to be able to digivolve the opponent's Digimon, which could be really annoying and anti-tempo them, while putting their Digimon in range of some of our abilities, while weakening them all at the same time. Then his Altern's ability is just adding some extra protection to be able to keep our Digimon around as best as he possibly can by using his inheritables as sources to be able to prevent him from leaving play if he were to be deleted or returned to the hand or deck. Next, I'm going to be running 3 copies of Machinedramon. So this is the BT11 version of Machinedramon, and this is a pretty decent card to use for, again, all the different ways that we could use him, whether we're digivolving up our chain or need to hard play him due to some of our card effects. He's still a really decent card at trying to dig out our Analogman Tamer, which is the only Tamer we're going to be running, and a really good card to synergize with the deck because of what Analogman is doing, on top of the fact that we also get a look for our machines or cyborg traded Digimon, and either add it to our hand or place it underneath this card while trashing the rest, so it's also trying to help fill up our trash to be able to use for some of our various other abilities later on. And then, instead of having some built-in native protections, he has an on-delete ability to be able to replace himself with another Machinedramon as long as we have an Analogman in play. Then we're just going to shove that to the bottom and play a new Machinedramon, which could be either this Machinedramon or the EX1 Machinedramon. And speaking of the EX1 Machinedramon, I'm going to be running him at 2 copies in the deck, just because he's still a very strong card for this deck to use, and was the OG on how the deck wants to play. So he has a nice on-play ability that's going to be shoving up to 5 sources from our trash underneath him, as long as they're black or red cyborgs with different numbers. So this way we could try to utilize all of our different cards as best as we possibly can as a good payoff and reward for filling up our trash and filling up our hand as best as we can. Then we're going to be gaining a memory for each card we're going to be shoving back underneath. So if we're going to be hard playing him, then he's only going to be costing us 7, ideally, if we're utilizing all 5 sources, or in the best case scenario, we're going to be utilizing him with our BT11 Machinedramon to be able to play him for free and be able to gain that memory that way. And that could be a huge anti-tempo play towards the opponent. Then on top of that, he has some really decent built-in protections where he can't have his DP reduced, and on top of that, he has protection from being deleted as long as he has some inheritable sources to be able to trash it to prevent him from being deleted. And then the last Digimon of the deck is going to be 2 copies of Chaosdramon X Antibody as the big new inclusion to the deck. So Chaosdramon X Antibody, again, has a couple of different ways we could utilize him. Most of the time, we're just going to want to Digivolve him for 2 on top of our Chaosdramon or on top of our Machinedramon, just because he has an all-turns ability that's going to be able to allow us to gain the abilities of the Machinedramon and Chaosdramon in his Digivolution source, so that way he has all of those nice protections that we tried to line up for him. Then on top of that, he has a nice ability that's going to constantly add cyborgs and machines from our trash underneath him. So it's going to be a really hard Digimon to get rid of, especially with those protections, especially when he could keep adding to his inheritable sources. And then to round out the card, in case he were to try to be deleted, then we also get to try to punish the opponents during all turns, once per turn, by trashing the top card of their security stack. And then, as I already mentioned before, the only tamer of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Analogman. So in this style of meta, where Arrestedramon Superior Mode is a card, we don't want to run a whole lot of extra tamers, just because it can actually make our deck weak more specifically to that deck and that type of removal that we don't have protection against. But Analogman is still just a really good tamer in his own right by facilitating the overall engine of the deck by allowing us to try to fill up our trash and gain extra resources for filling up our trash, while also having a nice defensive ability where it allows us to redirect the opponent's attacks into our level 6 machine-traded Digimon, which is all of our level 6 Digimon, for some extra defensive lines of play. And then when it comes to the options, I'm going to be running 3 copies of Attack of the Heavy Mobile Digimon, just as a good Hail Mary play, so that way we could try to play our high-level machine-traded Digimon and have them gain the Rush and the Blitz ability, while trying to fill up our trash with another Cyborg to use for our machine-traded Digimon when we hard play them, while also being a pretty decent security threat in its own right for us discarding our machines and cyborgs to be able to delete the opponent's Digimon with the play cost equal to or less than what we discarded. And then the last option of the deck is going to be 2 copies of Black Memory Boost. So this would ordinarily be another tamer, but because we don't want to run any extra tamers, it only makes sense for us to use Black Memory Boost, not only to try to help with the overall consistency of the deck, but to also gain some extra memory at a later turn to try to make more powerful follow-up plays with. But when it comes to building your own version of the deck, it's always best to understand what the deck is trying to do at its core. So you could run a whole bunch of various other sub-packages and rookies and eggs if you really wanted to, but I feel like just keeping it consistent with black just allows you to have easier access at Digivolution, so you could actually try to Digivolve all the way up into your higher stage Digimon, which a lot of the newer Machinedramon tools want to support a little bit more. Then you're still going to be running Hagurumon and Guardromon just because they're really good, but it opens up the flexibility to run whatever other level 4 you feel like it best would help synergize with the deck. Then when it comes to the level 5s, it is just toolboxing your inheritable abilities to be able to do various different things, all help round out what the deck is capable of when you're able to build your big stack and to keep adding to your big stack. Then Analogman and the brand new Machinedramon are really good in combination with each other to be able to play the old Machinedramon, which is still really important and super relevant to the deck, again, because we have a Chaosdramon and Chaosdramon X Antibody to be able to go on top of it and have a mega stack to work with. And then when it comes to the overall gameplay and game plan of the deck, it is all centered around your Machinedramons and your Chaosdramons to be able to form a Mega Digimon that's going to be really hard for the opponents to get rid of, and if they can't get rid of it, then the game could be over relatively quickly, depending on how you build your stack and the abilities that you end up seeing. I know the deck isn't necessarily known for having super high consistency, which is kind of why I like the inclusion of Memory Boost to be able to help with the consistency a little bit more. But you're going to be trying to raise your level 3s in your raising area to get some good draw draw and cycling that way. Obviously, the best one that you're going to want to use is Dorumon to pair up with Dorimon, so that way when you Digivolve into your Chaosdramon or your Machinedramon, if you're adding cards underneath your Digimon, then it's going to allow you to gain some extra card draw and memory, and if we're able to maintain that stack and go into a Chaosdramon X Antibody, then that ability is going to be triggering at the beginning of our main phase every single turn, because Chaosdramon X Antibody is going to constantly add sources underneath our Digimon, which is super powerful. But we're going to usually try to play Hagurumon in the early stages of the game to be able to get some good cycling going, so we could try to see our parts and pieces as quickly and efficiently as we possibly can. Then when it comes to the level 4s, it really doesn't matter which one you Digivolve into at this point. Tankmon is good for the tempo, and then Guardromon is good for the added inheritable that's doing what Hagurumon is doing. So that way we could try to have alternative ways to be able to cycle through our deck, which is essentially what Analogman is trying to do. So we could try to fill up our trash out with as many level 5 cyborgs as we possibly can, so that way when we go into our Machinedramon or Chaosdramon X, we're able to utilize them to their utmost potential. And from here, you're usually going to want to try to Digivolve into your Diggers if you're planning on moving out. If you're not planning on moving out, then it doesn't really matter what level 5 you Digivolve into. We just have a slew of various different level 5s depending on the situation and, again, what you're able to see. But again, the whole goal is to try to sit on your one stack, move it out, especially with an Analogman set up, and then go into your Machinedramon to be able to try to dig for your Chaosdramon or Chaosdramon X Antibody. You could use the Machinedramon to add a Chaosdramon either to your hand or underneath, especially if you already have a Chaosdramon X Antibody, so that way you could just Digivolve right on top if you didn't already Digivolve into a Chaosdramon, so that way we gain access to both the Machinedramon and the Chaosdramon's abilities. But even if we don't Digivolve up into our Chaosdramons, just having this Machinedramon and an Analogman is still pretty good, because when it gets deleted, then we get to bottom deck the Analogman, so that way we get rid of our Tamer from our field because we no longer need it, or don't want it anymore depending on the matchup, and that allows us to potentially play our Machinedramon from the EX1 to start formulating a brand new stack, and then start using that stack to go into our Chaosdramon or Chaosdramon X Antibody. And then we're just trying to sit on one of these 3 cards, especially if Chaosdramon X Antibody has Machinedramon and or Chaosdramon underneath, to be able to give him the protections to be able to stick around to make him as annoying against the opponent as it possibly can. Having just a hard Digimon to kill really could stop some of the opponent's potential aggro or lines of play. And that's kind of where Attack of the Heavy Mobile Digimon comes in handy as a good Hail Mary option. In case we started to chip at the opponent and they don't have any security left, then we could use it to either get back into the game to be able to play one of these cards to start formulating that stack and be able to swing with it right away, or to be able to use it to literally just win the game, acting as a good alternative win condition. The deck really doesn't need any level 7s because you're trying to use Chaosdramon and Chaosdramon X basically like pseudo level 7s, which they're really good at trying to disrupt the opponent and maintain a solid board state at the same time. And then there's still a slew of other tech and tools that you could think about incorporating into the deck, all depending on what you're trying to gain out of the deck, what kind of cards you like personally, and what you're expected to face out of the given meta. So if you wanted to, you could swap out some of the level 3s, run a completely separate level 3 package. Yes, there is alternative color ones that you could run, but I'm just going to try to stay mostly focused on black for that consistency in evolution. So you could add in some extra floodgates, because black has a couple of floodgates that we could run to disrupt the opponent, on top of a security rookie that we could use to, again, try to disrupt the opponent and act as a good security threat while still being a rookie. Then we do have a Tapirmon for its inheritable to DP boost our Digimon. We do have the Promo Sunarizumon as another really good card, acting as a good passive while he's sitting on the field, or inheritable to try to increase the damage output of the deck. Then we even have Ludamon as a really surprise tech that you could incorporate into the deck as well as an alternative way to be able to gain the blocker inheritable. Then we do have some other pretty decent level 4 Digimon that you could run. Metalmamemon is just a good tempo card in general for us to utilize, on top of the fact that we do have Jazzerichmon, again, more so for its inheritable ability to synergize with what we're already playing around with. Then on top of that, there's just a lot of various different level 5s that we could use, even some off-color level 5s that we could start thinking about utilizing as well. But I'm just going to be highlighting a couple here, just because their redundancy in abilities is kind of something we're generally wanting to look forward to, so that way we could try to see the abilities we want to see as consistently as we can, because we do need the Digimon to have different card numbers in order for them to be usable. On top of the fact that we do have some other really good synergistic options in the form of Ultimate Connection and Super Eradication Attack, on top of other various removal tech that we could run into the deck. And if you are brave enough to want to play some various other tamers for this style of deck, we do have really good ones in the form of Kazu, just because it's synergizing with cyborgs and machines already, on top of the fact that we could use some various generic memory setters, and we even have Analog Youth as another card to try to help act as a good consistency tool, making it a highly customizable deck for various metas and situations. So that's all I really have for this video. As always, feel free to tell me your thoughts down in the comments below, and down in the description below are a couple of different ways you could support me and the channel. So I do have a TCG Player affiliate link, so when you use that link to buy cards off of TCG Player, then some of that money will go to supporting me and the channel. I also do make and sell playmats over on Overcard Gamers on Facebook, so when you buy a playmat with my design, then some of that money will also go to help supporting me and the channel. And on top of all of that, I do have a Twitch account over on twitch.tv/Zenitsu, so giving me a follow and a subscription also helps support me there, and I do play Digimon on top of various other games on that platform as well. So thank you everyone for watching, and as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content, and I'll see you in the next video.